Hey everybody, this is Dr. Johnson, and this is a brief presentation on the slides for HRM Case Study Workshop number 3. In this video, we're going to be reviewing identifying your core positions for your case study, doing a job design analysis on those core positions, doing a competency analysis, and finally your observations and conclusions. Those are the 4 components of the part 2 of your case study due next week. So let's first look at what you've covered so far in your case study. So in case study part 1, you looked at your vision, mission, values, and you defined the customer value proposition for your case study company. You identified the strategy using Porter's 4 generic strategies for your case study company. You identified sources of competitive advantage, and you identified competencies that are needed inside your organization to deliver on those sources of competitive advantage and therefore deliver the company's strategy. You also identified related behaviors to those competencies. So now, in part 2 of your case study, you're going to be identifying core positions and doing some discussion about those core positions in your analysis. So what are core positions? In this case study, we're defining core positions as those positions that are directly involved in delivering the company's sources of competitive advantage. That usually is a fairly small percentage of the total workforce. That will vary depending on the size of your organization. In a small startup with maybe 15 or 20 people, it could be that just about all of those positions are core positions. But in larger organizations, it'll be a relatively small percentage of the total workforce. All other positions that are not core positions are support positions. And it may appear somewhat counterintuitively that those support positions also include people who are in supervisory or management positions just about all the time. There may be a few exceptions to that, but in most cases, supervisors and managers and people higher up in the organizational hierarchy are not going to be occupying what we're identifying here as core positions. Again, those core positions are the ones that are directly involved in delivering the company's sources of competitive advantage. That is key to our thinking here and key to the definition. So you'll want to look at workbook page 30 to see this exercise on identifying your core positions. It'll be much bigger and easier to read. But quickly, just to review this here using the slide, you've got a 5-step process here for identifying your core positions. And step 1 has some specific questions here for you to answer and to help you discern out what are those core positions at my organization. The second one is kind of a double check to make sure that you've included all of the relevant positions and identify your support positions, so those that are not directly involved in delivering your company's sources of competitive advantage, but that are essential to the operation of the organization. And you should find that any position that's not a core position or not a support position really is not necessary. And most organizations are not going to have extra positions hanging out, right? So all of your positions in your organization will either fall into the core or the support functions. So then there's another review step here. Step 4, you're going to be creating a table, and you'll see a table that is in the template for part 2 where you would actually fill that table in and define and identify what are your core positions and your support positions. And then finally, you're going to have a discussion, a 1 to 2 page discussion, detailing out and defending why you identified particular positions as core positions and the others as support positions. So that's the first step, is identifying your core positions in your case study organization. Next, you're going to be doing a core position job design analysis. And think back to our job design discussion a few weeks ago, and you'll recall Hackman and Oldham's job characteristics model. And here you've got a visual of their job characteristics model, and you'll be looking at job characteristics in relation to PIRK, so you'll remember that stands for power, information, rewards, and knowledge, and the impact of both of those on the company's ability to deliver its sources of competitive advantage, strategy, and customer value proposition. So just like with identifying your core positions, there's a job design analysis exercise. That's on page 32 of your case study workbook. First step is to select one core position or job group. So this is important for all the core positions that you identified in the first table in case study part 2. Now you're just going to select one of those for the purposes of this case study assignment. You don't need to do this analysis on all of them, just choose one, and that one core position that you select for doing your job design analysis will also be the same core position that follows through that you analyze in the rest of part 2 as well as in part 3. So select one core position. Next is analyze that core position in relationship to Hackman and Oldham's job characteristics model and Lawler's PIRK model. There's several questions here for you to answer in regards to those. And then finally, you're going to write a 2 to 3 page discussion addressing these questions and doing that job design analysis. Next, after you've done your job design analysis, you're going to do a competency analysis. And the objective here in this competency analysis is to determine how effectively or not a group of core position employees is exhibiting competency-related behaviors and therefore helping to deliver the sources of competitive advantage and executing the company's strategy. So you're going to be going back to the competencies that you previously identified in case study part 1, linking that up with your core positions that you've identified here in case study part 2, and analyzing a group to figure out, are they exhibiting the competencies that are necessary for the company to have sustained competitive advantage. There's a number of tables here in this section, and I've captured those here in this visual. And the point of this visual here is to demonstrate where there's overlap in information. And in a lot of cases, there's information you're just going to draw from previous tables that you've put together and paste that information into these new tables. Of course, if you were doing this in industry, you'd probably have a piece of software that would do this automatically for you. Here we're going to do it manually. So you identified your core positions. Your first one is you're going to use, in this first table, you're just going to use one core position that we identified in your job design analysis. You're going to list that core position here. Then you are going to identify the related sources of competitive advantage that you previously identified in part 1 and in identifying your core positions at the beginning of this part 2 exercise. The competencies that are related to those sources of competitive advantage go here. Again, that'll come from case study part 1. And your related critical behaviors, again, coming from case study part 1. So the only really new information here as it relates to case study part 2 is your core positions. The next table, you're going to do a current job holder assessment. And the information from your core position comes right here and goes into the core position job title, right? So that goes straight into there. Related distinctive competencies come straight from this table and go into these boxes here. Your related critical behaviors come from this table and go straight into these boxes here. And then you're going to rate each person, each job incumbent in this core position against using a rating table or rating scale that is defined in the case study workbook, and we'll show you that in just a minute. You'll rate each behavior, the individual's performance on each of those behaviors. You'll do this for 1, 2, at least 3 different people, and you'll have a table for each of those. You can see here is employee A, employee B, employee C. Those are 3 different people. Use letters or some other indicator or pseudonym. You should not put people's actual names in here. You'll take that information then, and once you've done that for 3 individual people, you'll take these and you're going to, in this table here, develop a overall average or an overall competency analysis for that group. Here it's called the company-wide analysis. It may not be company-wide because you only have 3 employees here that you're working with, but you're going to develop an average for that group. So you have distinctive competencies. These again are the same distinctive competencies that you've been listing, right? So it comes right from these previous tables. Related critical behaviors, again, same information there. What's new here is you're going to create an average rating for each behavior. So based on how you scored people in employee A, employee B, employee C in terms of their ratings, you're going to take those and average them for each of the behaviors here. And then you're going to create an average overall rating by competency based on what you have for those behaviors. Looks a little bit confusing here, but if you think about it and walk through it logically, it will all make sense. At the end, really what you're trying to get is this rating for the whole group on how they are performing the competencies and demonstrating the competencies in their day-to-day work. Once you've done that, then you just put together your observations and conclusions. What is it that you're observing regarding your selected core positions in terms of job design and related competencies and the job holder's ability to contribute to the company's sources of competitive advantage? And you'll discuss your recommendations for bringing the organization into better alignment if that is necessary. So that's a quick overview of what's going on with case study part 2. You are welcome to post questions, and I will put a discussion board up on Brightspace for March 7th. So you have an opportunity to post any questions you have about the case study part 2 assignment, and if you have some draft material that you'd like to share there and get some feedback on, I'm happy to provide feedback on those drafts as well. I look forward to reading your posts and replying to your questions.